Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli out here in the shop. I'm on the heels of a really good tournament that I had up in Wisconsin. Caught a lot of fish, largemouth and smallmouth, from shallow, clear to stained water. I caught almost every fish I weighed in on a rig called the Dumdum Rig. And, you know, I've had a lot of questions about what is the Dumdum Rig? And, you know, a lot of people, and for good reason, you know, when people last week asked me, what's the Dumdum Rig? I said, it's a wacky rig. And I was telling the truth, like the half truth. I was honestly throwing a wacky rig. But a couple little modifications to a traditional wacky rig to make it a Dumdum Rig. And a couple of these little modifications can really help you catch a lot of fish. So I want to explain the Dumdum Rig to you today, show you some different options, and then finally show you how to rig it up. Let's start with the components. The components of a Dumdum Rig, you already have them right now. You don't have to go out and buy nothing separate. The two hooks that I use for a Dumdum Rig, I use a wacky jig head. That one right there, that's a 1/16 ounce VMC Ike approved wacky jig head. And I also, when I'm fishing weightless, I'll just use a regular little wacky rig hook. This one's a number 4 VMC wacky hook. I like the size 2, depending on the size of the bait you use. Okay, so wacky jig head, a wacky hook, the bait. My favorite bait for the Dumdum Rig is a 4-inch stick bait. This happens to be my bread and butter right here. This is the Berkley Power Bait 4.25 inch General. I love this bait. And on this Dumdum Rig, this is really going to give you a lot of versatility. I also fish it with the bigger 5-inch size as well. But I love the 4.25. So everything's easy right now. Next component is just an O-ring. And I use a VMC O-ring tool, wacky rig tool. I'll slide that ring on the bait, and now I've got an O-ring on the bait that's going to help me keep the bait on there. Everything sounds like a traditional wacky rig right now, I know. But here comes the difference. And the difference is a technique that I learned when I was carp fishing a few years ago. I filmed an episode of Going Ike in Philadelphia for the common carp. And the carp guys showed me a technique called the hair rig. The hair rig. And in essence, all a hair rig is, you're using your traditional hooks, again, a VMC wacky hook and a wacky jig head and just a regular wacky hook. And then I'm snelling to the hook. I'm going to snell a liter of braid. And this is where the Dumdum name comes in effect, because it's so simple. And I'm going to show you how to tie this, but all I'm doing is snelling on 15 or 20 pound green braid. I love Berkley X5, spider wire is great stuff. And I'm snelling that liter on there. And so I can still tie it onto my main line. But now I have this hair line out the back, this length of braid. And to that, I have options, and I'm going to rig the bait to the hair, not to the hook itself. And I want to show you a couple of these rigging options. First one, and this is the traditional Dumdum Rig, and this is the one that I used last week in Wisconsin. Everybody thought it was traditional wacky, but this is where the Dumdum comes in. There, if you look at it, I've got my hair, and to that hair, I attached a simple snap swivel. I like the smaller ones. This is a VMC size 0 snap. It's a little bit more compact, and it's just a traditional one-way snap. And I like that hairline to be close to the hook. If you look at it, there's probably a ½ inch of hairline there of that 15 or 20 pound braid. Now, instead of putting the bait on the main wacky rig hook itself, I'm not going to do that. Now I'm going to get that snap and I'm going to just go under the O-ring and I'm going to snap it shut. There you go. Now we've got a wacky rig where the bait is not attached to the hook itself. I know what you're thinking. Why? Why? What is that going to do? It's going to do a lot. First one is action. Because this bait is not impeded by the wire or the jig head or the hook, it's only on a snap on an O-ring, it's got freedom of movement. Not just the traditional wacky shake on the fall, but 360-degree movement of that bait to turn, to go to the side if you hit cover. So the first one is action. More action on the fall. The second thing, and I want to grab another bait to show you, is better hookup percentage. One of the major downfalls of traditional wacky rigging is that when you hook it through there and the fish grabs it, a lot of times when he grabs it, he'll crush it down with his mouth, and this happens. The bait balls on the hook. I know if you're watching this, I know you've had it happen a lot, and you come back and you're like, oh God, why? Well, now, by using the Dumdum Rig instead, using that hairline, the bait is never going to ball up. It's never going to double on the hook because of the way it's falling. It's like a ball and chain, especially on the wacky jig head. As it falls, more action, and when that fish comes and sucks it up, he gets the hook every time. I learned it in carp fishing. The carp do the same thing. As they eat the bait and suck it, they bring the hook with them. Just as a reminder, you don't have to do it with the wacky jig head. You could do it with a regular weightless wacky as well. Okay, so the first Dumdum Rig is traditional, using a snap, or I've also seen the Dumdum Rig where guys use the hitchhiker. And instead of going under an O-ring, you can just twist into the bait, just like that. You're going to lose a few more baits like that, but it's a great alternative to using a snap swivel on the Dumdum Rig. Second method is using the Dumdum Rig to add components. This is another great one I've used in the past, and this one is real simple to do as well. Again, this is on a 16th ounce VMC wacky jig head. I've got about a 1/2 inch of hair. That's 15-pound or 20-pound Berkley X5 in green. And to it, look, the simplest thing ever. I put a swivel, a two-way swivel, to a split ring, to a little tiny willow blade. And now I'm going to do the traditional wacky rigging. But now as that thing falls, watch what kicks up. Boom. Now I've got this little fluttering blade behind my wacky rig. So it's got the wacky rig shake as it falls, and this little Dumdum Rig with the blade on the hair is turning behind it. This is really great when the fish are feeding on small bait fish and you need that extra flash. So we've got the bladed version of the Dumdum Rig. And last but not least, I want to show you this other one, which is a really cool rig because it gives you some different options. And that is adding a stinger to the Dumdum Rig. And in a lot of places, really super clear water, places that get heavily fished, heavy fishing pressure, even on a subtle bait like a wacky rig, a lot of times those fish miss the bait. They come at it, but they miss it. In this situation, you can use one or both different style hooks as a stinger. So traditional wacky on my wacky jig head, as it falls, I have the main hook, but look what I have sticking right behind it now. And again, as gravity pulls it down, that hook will always be right in position. So it's a great trailer hook, or I can put that same wacky on my hair. And again, I can use an O-ring, and now I have a double hook system for those fish. As that bait falls, now I'm doubling my chances to catch that fish. It's called the Dumdum Rig because it's so simple. It's so easy. before I go, I want to show you how easy it is to rig up this system. Here we've got our green braid. This is Berkeley. I think this is 20-pound X5. And I want to show you how simple this is. And again, this is why it's called the Dumdum. And by the way, on all these rigs, you just throw it out and let it fall. You're not doing anything. The bait has all the action. It's the dumbest thing in the world. Thus the name Dumdum Rig. So when I'm tying it, all I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the eyelet of the bait, and I'm going to pull out a really long length of hair. You want to give yourself a lot of leader back here to tie whatever you're going to end up tying on the back. A snap, a blade, a stinger hook. So give yourself some extra room. Take the line, and I want you to double it. Double it along the shank of that hook, okay? So I just made a loop. Now I'm going to get my tag end, and I'm going to wrap the tag end around that loop and the base of the hook where the jig head is at 6 to 8 times. Just going to wrap it around. There's 7 times. Now I've got that loop, and again, this is just a traditional snell knot. I'm going to go through that loop. I'm going to go back through it. See that loop hanging out? I'm going to go through that loop, grab the tag end. I'm going to start cinching it down a little. I like to wet it just a little bit. And I start to cinch it down from both ends. And it's going to create a snell. And the great thing about the snell is really a knot that doesn't slip. So once you've got it secured to the top of that head, look at that. Now your knot's there. I'm going to get my scissors. I'm going to trim the eyelet knot through, and I'll get a little dab of super glue, and I'll place that super glue right on that side of the knot, and now I've got my hair in the back. And again, it's a little long, so I can go and tie a blade, a snap, a stinger hook, whatever I want to tie, and I can go ahead and get that anywhere from 1/4 to 1/2 inch from the bait. You don't want that hair line too long. You want to keep it close to the head, but it's snelled and it's never going to come off of that jig head. Man, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I explained to you the truth about the Dumdum Rig. Give it a try, whether you use the snap version to give that bait maximum action and hook penetration, whether you're using the stinger to get short striking fish, or whether you're using a custom combination of the Dumdum Rig, like that little tricked out blade spinning on the back. It's going to show the fish something different. You're going to be one of the only dudes out there fishing it, I promise, and you're going to catch a lot more bass. Mike Iaconelli out here in the shop talking about the Dumdum Rig.